Today is Thursday, June 12th, 2025, and we are going to be talking into the Idaho 4 case, specifically how it's been a filing frenzy, as my guest tonight, SammyTMafia, mentioned in her email to me. She sent me over a bunch of documents, tells me she has 20 pages of handwritten notes, and if there's one thing about SammyTMafia, outside of her being extremely passionate when she talks about this case, it's that she prepares her butt off. So I am excited to have her on this upcoming Sunday at 4 p.m. Central. It'll be live on Surviving the Truth. The handle is Surviving the Truth 1382. And I have a little bit about Kelly here because her story is absolutely incredible. And she is, it's the real deal story, folks. I guess that's all I can say about it. But here's a little bit about Kelly. While shame and pain kept her quiet for years, Kelly's journey of healing and freedom from sex trafficking are giving her a loud voice today. Having survived the unsurvivable, her skills come forth in maneuvering the difficult arena of a very painful subject matter. Her courage to walk into a crowd and discuss this controversial subject is a communication gift that she excels in. Her tenacity to see others freed keeps her pushing through the most difficult of obstacles. Kelly has traveled to hostile and distant areas to carry her message of freedom. Kelly was trafficked in and from the heartland of the USA and taken to distant places. Her experiential knowledge of how trafficking operates in the Midwest is incredibly valuable to those hoping to make a difference in this very real war. She details her captivity in the dark world of sex trafficking / commercial sexual exploitation and the journey out in her book, From Trafficked to Treasured, which I did do some research. It is available on Amazon, and I believe it had the Kindle link as well. So that'll be this Sunday. And then Kelly's kind enough where she's going to come onto my chat this live, probably the second or third week of July. So that will be awesome. And I'm going to get to interview her, and we will be able to, as the Hive, hear Kelly's story and get to ask her some questions. So it's incredible that she's so forthright in talking about this. And the reason why her team had reached out is that a lot of times human trafficking doesn't really get talked about in the quote unquote true crime community, right? So obviously trafficking happened. It's true. Trafficking is a crime. And I think that what she is trying to do by spreading the word through these type of shows is very, very awesome. So that is this Sunday, as I said. The Hive came through and they were able to find the location of the luminol photo that we were looking at last night. And it looks to be right here. We were pretty spot on. I think we were a little off where I was zoomed in on. I think I was right here. I could be wrong. You can see this Marshall badge clear as day, chat. So this photo, I've never seen this photo before. The only time that I've ever seen the quote unquote cowboys was when they were walking out towards the news anchor and they had blurred it out. But this is clear as day. Now, this is also very interesting. This was like a last second one that I included. I got the email after I'd already got the slides done for tonight. And on the left side here is what the email wrote. I'll read it to you guys if you can't see it. It says, Birdie, I was looking at Autumn G's TikTok page today, and she was talking about her sister bringing her breakfast every day. And when she was going through a hard time, well, I thought it would be a picture of Kaylee, but instead it's Maddie. What if SG really is Maddie's dad too? Just caught me off guard because I was expecting to see Kaylee. And up top here on this photo, said my sister would drive to me every day in the prime of summer as a teenage girl when all her friends were at the beach and partying, doing stuff much more fun than I was, with breakfast and a drink, and sit with me all day so I didn't go back to him, so I was never alone. That pretty much sums up who she was as a person. And I just also noticed that SammyTMafia is backstage, chat, so she'll actually be able to get up here for the last couple of Hive Mind finds. I have a couple more Hive Mind finds, but obviously chime in whenever you see fit. I was sent just like a Google photo album is how I was describing it, of like a working photo album of like, this is when it happened. Here are photos from this. Here are photos from this press conference. Here are photos from when they were taking the victim's belongings out, all the way down to like trial stuff. Okay. So I was scrolling through and I'm looking at these dates. Okay. So they remove the victim's belongings on December 7th. Okay.
And are we even sure that that's what those are? You know, like we have where's the logs? Like
Well,
I had a problem with the fact that the things were boxed up together, because I would think if you're taking things out of a crime scene, everything would have to be individually gone through and packaged. And just in case the guy, if you don't know where he went in the house, then who's to say he wasn't in everybody's room looking for something? So that's why I just thought it was so odd that why are we removing bundles of stuff together? Shouldn't you be parsing through every piece of everything if you don't know where he went? Oh, I'm sorry, your audio.
Now it should be better.
Okay, there we go.
I think I was a little quiet to the chat. Hopefully that's better. Okay, yeah, I totally agree, and that's where I think a lot of people will think that like planting evidence takes this giant conspiracy and coercion between people. It takes one cop.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So, what I was showing this for was because, okay, so if we take it at face value, which I know we don't really ever do here in the Hive, but December 7th, they move out the belongings. December 6th, we've all seen it. They load a bloody mattress, or what people thought, into the back of a damn F-150.
And let's not forget, they didn't do anything for the mattress. Like they didn't, even though there's a blood stain on it, nothing was done to the mattress. None of that's in evidence.
Yeah, you know, I was zooming in on all of this. Okay, like, don't get me wrong. It definitely, if it passes as a blood test and it is blood, it looks like there's blood, right? But I also thought about like, were they like, was it like the fitted sheet? That's a dark colored fitted sheet that's wadded up and thrown on there. That's kind of being seen through that, kind of like that microfiber, whatever kind of.
Oh yeah, like a
put around it. So that, again, that's like, I don't know, but it definitely looks, you can see the darker spots. I put these together because then on February 24th, the house gets boarded up. And then all the way now in summertime, the disaster recovery truck is there with a tarp over it.
Yeah.
And the house is boarded up. My question is, this happened November 12th, November 13th. Yep. What the hell still has biohazard? Because if you look at what a disaster relief company is usually called in for in a homicide house, what are they having to tarp off so that people don't see still in June?
I also just didn't understand what, I know that they were taking 3D imaging. So they were doing LiDAR and 3D imaging. I don't know if that requires a tarp, but again, maybe it's what they were taking pictures of that they don't want you to see. I can't, for the life of me, I don't know, because the date is so much further into the future from the last time that they were all in the house collecting evidence, essentially moving day.
It looked like moving day if they didn't have badges on.
So I don't know, but it kind of reminds me of like, you know, the shitty Karen Reed case where it's like 18 months later, you're now just talking to the plow driver who's in front of the house.
Is that really how long it took till first contact?
18 months.
Wow.
They didn't talk to some people who were in the house that night for about 18 to 20 months.
Yeah, I didn't know that the plow driver, because that would have been the first thing I would have thought of is, hey, let's talk to all the plows and let's see if somebody was on there, because that was an initial thought was, you know, he got struck by a plow.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were going to blame it on Lucky Loughran, to be honest with you. And then when they saw her bumper, they changed the plan. I think he was going to be the patsy.
Yeah. Well, the other reason too, to just cap this off quick, I think a lot of people thought like that this was when the bodies got taken out if they didn't see the rest of the photo. Like, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
feel like there was like, well, they covered it and you couldn't see it. And there could be another photo of this, but this is not when the bodies were taken out. Obviously, this is in June, but it's just odd because I started thinking, okay, so they took the bodies out, then they took all their belongings out.
Mm-hmm.
Then a month later, they take the mattress and all the stuff with blood out.
I know.
Then they board it up. Then the disaster. It doesn't make any sense as far as how they structured it.
And don't forget, at some point on December 19th, or 20th, I forgot which date it was. They sent in the cleaning crew and then they got sent back out, the HVAC company.
Yep.
So, I mean, the whole thing makes, I always say, I'm like, if you were to look at this, the way that they were looking at the Karen Reed case, like an accident reconstructionist, if you had to be a homicide reconstructionist, go. First principles. How did this happen in this time frame with these injuries the way you're saying? Like, there has to be a physical possibility of this being one person, all these rooms, the lack of DNA evidence. So, first principle, if you can't get there, then the rest of this is all nonsense.
Let's get into the filing frenzy, shall we? I can zoom in on all of these if you'd like.
So crazy. Yeah, start on anyone.
All right. Let's get out of this and
so we could see what's going. And it's so funny because it's like you're trying to figure out when you're like reading these filings, like, what does this mean? What is the result of this? And everything is sealed, but you can kind of get an idea what's happening. Okay, so this is the court is having before it the motion to seal stipulation and order for admission of additional exhibits and good cause appearing now. Therefore, it is hereby ordered that the parties' stipulation for admission of additional exhibits as evidence at trial and its corresponding order shall be filed under seal pursuant to ICAR 32I, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
I told them that you got some notes. They were.
Yeah. So I got some notes.
Somebody goes 20 pages. Yo.
So basically what this is saying, just so everybody can understand, is the court is approving that the parties came to an agreement, the stipulation. That means they're going to allow the introduction of additional exhibits into evidence. Specifically, the court is granting a motion to seal the stipulation. So both parties, both the defense and the prosecutors are saying, yes, we will seal this, keeping it confidential, and it's approving the stipulation for admission of the exhibits. They agree to seal, and they both agree that in the case that they both consent to the introduction of new exhibits into evidence. And when they say good cause appearing, that means this phrase indicates that the court found sufficient reason or justification. So the court finds, okay, I'm in agreement. Both parties are in agreement. Everybody's happy with this order, apparently.
And does it have to state what specifically the purpose of it would be as well in that filing?
Meaning, so basically what it's saying is that they both agree to seal the order. So like whatever's in the additional exhibits, we're not going to know. Both parties are saying we're not showing this to the public, so you can't FOIA request it. You won't get to know until trial. This is like the name of the game right now, because if you notice, everything is both parties are agreeing to seal pretty much everything, even though I thought we were going to start unsealing things. I remember, don't you remember Hitler saying something at one point, like, we have to stop doing this, but it's gotten worse.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think like the kind of the term that you coined, like the filing frenzy, is very accurate.
Somebody said pokey dots. How can an attorney from San Francisco be on this case? It's called pro hoc vice. So when you want to be a attorney, whether it be a special prosecutor or come into another case, you have to be allowed by that judge and that court. So you have a pro hoc vice order. That's how, like, Alan Jackson in the Karen Reed case, he's an attorney from California, but he was given permission. And Mark Betterow, who's from New York, tried to be on the defense system. He got the pro hoc vice, and then the judge denied his pro hoc vice. So she said, no, you can't be on this case. So it's up to the judge.
What was the other word that you used? It was like prima
facie evidence.
Yeah. Can you explain that?
Yeah. Okay, this goes with one of the orders. Okay. So, hold on. Let me get that. Here's a corresponding order, public access. Hold on. Boop, boop, boop. State supplemental previous compliance.
Yeah, I want to talk while you're looking for that. I think Nick might have just hit the nail on the head. He goes, after what you just said, it's like, that's because whoever did it isn't behind bars.
Right. Oh, I mean, that's
so obvious.
Well, most of the time when you're sealing something, it has to do with either federal information like state secrets, or it's privacy concerns or confidential information. So it's got to be one of the three. Why would you be having privacy concerns? Like, most witnesses and evidence is all pre-trial, and we know what's coming in and what's coming out. There's no surprises. I've never seen such sealing in my life.
I don't think many cases that on its face what it is, meaning a quadruple homicide by a lone perp in a college town, have.
No.
I can scroll through these and you can tell me when to stop if that's quicker.
Okay, I'm just looking up. Hold on. Okay. Issuing a defendant motion related. Okay. Well, I'll do for the motion. So the one that's the state's motion in opposition to the defendant's motion to continue, because this was a big one. Basically, the defense wants to get more time because of these leaks. Like, we're having a whole separate investigation on top of what's already happening in this case, which is insane, because they have to figure out, could a jury be impartial or not based on the leaks? And how detrimental were these leaks to his rights, and how prejudicial are these leaks? So we're still in the middle of that. And because of that, the defense wants more time and said, I am not going to be able to give an adequate defense for my client because we don't even know yet the ramifications. We haven't even finished this investigation into this. So
do you know which document it is?
Yeah, it's the state's motion in opposition to defendant's motion to continue.
Oh, okay. Let me just look so people can read it as you're going in on it.
So the state is arguing that previous cases with similar circumstances, they don't want that to be considered when the court decides the defense's motion to continue, and not consider if the current court can find enough impartial jurors. So the state's basically saying, ignore precedent. We know that there's precedent in circumstances similar to what's happening with leaks and prejudicial evidence leaks. But hey, judge, just ignore those. We don't want you to consider those other cases, okay? And the defense's argument is, because of a previous high-profile cases, the public may have preconceived notions about the current case, making it difficult to find an unbiased jury. The court's response is, he hasn't decided yet. But basically, just because other cases did doesn't mean that this one will. So the defense has to have concrete evidence. It has to be specific that this finding about impartiality and jurors not being able to be impartial is, you have to give a specific example of it. So one of the things that a judge can do is order a voir dire, like a more instead of just a jury questionnaire, he's going to have to individually voir dire jurors and ask them, a lot more questions about what they know. That could be a remedy. The state's arguing that all the discovery deadlines have passed, so we should just go to trial. Like, all these dates that he set forth are passed. So what's the problem? The problem is you leaked information. So you put a little bit of a bump in the road, bro.
Yeah.
Like, we would be happy to go to trial, but you were busy leaking information. Now we have to deal with this, and they're acting like this is the defense's problem. They weren't leaking information.
Right. And the thing that is so hard for me to wrap my head around is, again, you would think if you're really about to put this on to somebody that it's not, or if you truly believe that it's this man who's on trial, why would you ever risk the defense getting handed a literal, hey, here is something that we're going to mess up for you on a platter by having it leaked to Dateline? Or like, and it's not just like Steve G or whoever leaked it to Dateline. It's not like that was the only time that this has happened.
Right.
Like,
and that's what the defense is saying. We don't even have the full picture of what this means for our case, for our client. So let's play this out with the special prosecutor and figure out how badly this biased potential jurors before we go to trial. I mean, so then the state's saying, the pretrial conferences already happened. The deadlines are passed. Too bad, so sad. And they're saying that Brian Kohberger's is seeking an unspecified trial continuance, claiming an incomplete mitigation investigation. Basically, the court hasn't done enough to mitigate what these leaks are and figure out who's leaking and how much of an effect they're going to have on the trial. So let's deal with this mitigation first, and then we can go to trial. And the state saying, no, you've had enough time.
well, also, if he's saying that, I think he used like whatever, that the court's not doing enough. There's a word that you said before, I can't remember, but it's like the defense is arguing the state's not doing, or the court's not doing enough to prevent leaks. And the state says, no, you had enough time. How does it premiering on effing Dateline not justify that the court is not doing enough?
Well, the court is doing the right thing by having this mitigation investigation and ordering on-camera reviews with the state of pieces of evidence. But the problem is this is going on while they're trying to prepare for trial. So they're juggling two balls. They don't have a government behind them. They're just defense attorneys. They're a small team. So you want them to go through terabytes of evidence that they're never going to be able to comb through. They wouldn't be able to do it in 30 years. You want them to now deal with these mitigation hearings, on-camera reviews, ex parte meetings, and then you want to be mad at them and say, no, we have to have the trial at this date. What's the problem? What's the problem?
Well, and I want to talk about what Marco, I got the comment pinned, Sammy. Do you have any ideas why the defense may have, quote unquote, given up on the alibi months ago? Because I think Marco might be arguing that Taylor's just not ready, right? So again, I think more of a discussion-based thing. So
I think that she's been fleshing out different angles, but every time she comes close to fleshing out an angle or getting somewhere, something happens that takes her attention away from what she's doing and like what path she's on. She has to stop and go do the alternative suspects, or the state files a motion that she has to now respond to. Then she has to make motions to seal, that she has to ABC. So they keep making her jump through hoops at the same time she's trying to prepare for this defense. And now we have this mitigation circumstance on top of it. So,
yeah.
So what the state's going to argue is that probably if the defendant's motion doesn't have specific detail, meaning if you can't prove, but the mitigation investigation isn't over with. So yes, their motion's going to seem vague about impartiality and biased jury because you haven't had the entire investigation fleshed out yet. That's why they're saying, let's have a continuance.
I agree with that. I agree that it's what Phoenix just said. Like, they keep moving the goalpost. I do feel and also Wade too just said like the prosecution's goal is to muddy the waters. I think that our first real insight to just how bad it is. I remember the first time that I saw when Ann Taylor was talking about the chain of custody with the DNA after it left Othram. Do you remember that video clip? And she's like looking at the judge almost like she's kind of like, oh shit, we don't have it. I think she found out that hearing.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's got to be like a deer in the headlights moment for her of, oh man, like they're not playing.
There was a few of those pre-trial. There was a few of those. So what the judge has is obviously judicial discretion, which means he's going to have to balance fairness and efficiency when it comes to this motion of continuance. The judge is going to have to sit there and say to himself, okay, the burden of proof is on the defendant now to prove that whatever these leaks are going to bias a jury pool so much so that we're going to need to hold off until we figure this out. So he might need additional time, but is it potential delay tactics? The judge has to consider that as well. Is the defense just doing this for delay tactics? Is the defendant's attorneys being diligent to prepare for trial in order to ask for this continuance, which I think obviously they have been. Right. And then is there enough specificity in the request for the continuance? Meaning if it lacks specification in the defendant's motion regarding the missing evidence and how it would be obtained, may weaken their request for the continuance. So you're going to have to like say, we need to find this out. And that's why we need this continuance. Basically saying the stuff about the leaks. We need to see how far this bleeds out into the prejudicing our case. And then the judge can deny it. He could grant it, or he could give a limited continuance, which is, I think, what he might do. It's like splitting the baby. He might allow for further investigation of a particular identifiable issue. So if that's like splitting the baby, basically saying, okay, on this issue and this issue, like something in the leaks that are obviously prejudicial, we figured out what they were, we know the issues, we'll allow a continuance in order to further deal with this issue on these two specific things. That's what I think he might do.
What do you think those two things are?
I think it depends on who's doing the leaking.
Yeah.
And how they got the leaks, especially with the 911 call.
Well, the 911 call, and then also we noticed that Steve G's lawyer was the only lawyer present when they had that hearing about, or the meeting.
Yeah.
About the Dateline leaks.
Meeting.
Yep. So, I mean, to me, that has to be one of them, right?
I would think so. I would think Steve has something to do with this and his attorney, because like they said, they set up their own investigation. Remember? Now, part of me is wondering, do you think that because Steve was so critical of the investigation in the beginning, like the most vocally critical one in the beginning, and that tune changed? My thought is, if you're a behavioral analyst and you're like, this guy is running his mouth and we don't like it, what if we decide that we're going to start talking to him more? We're going to start feeding him things to make him feel like he's special, he's in the loop. That'll shut him up and placate him. So they're leaking misinformation to Steve, because a lot of the things he says aren't even true. So where is he getting it from? And my thought is, what if they placated Steve like a patsy by giving him false information, by giving him bullshit to keep him happy, to make him think like he's in the loop, and then all of a sudden he changes his tune? Like they just used him like a patsy.
What if they used him because they knew that this case was going to fall apart and it could be blamed on that leak from him versus law enforcement doing a bad job or having missteps?
Plus, it's a lot harder to come down on a leak if it's a parent of a victim.
Oh my God.
So it's a perfect patsy to leak misinformation to, or to leak your narrative that you want out there to play out, because who's going to be the one to say, hey, dad, your murdered kid, stop talking?
God, that is a different level of like nefarious intent planning by the state.
Not saying it's true. I'm saying that's just a thought I had. Because specifically when his opinions shifted so drastically and he became such a singer of a different tune, seemingly out of nowhere, the most critical vocal person became the most pro-state, pro-investigation, pro-anti-Koberger person when he was more open-minded. So something must have happened. And what I think happened is they started feeding him leaks to keep him happy.
Do you know what I find weird about on both sides, on the leaks? And I would put like the leaks and the people who think that he's 100% guilty in the same camp for this example. And then the people like ourselves that are like looking into stuff, they're diving into it. Again, whether we're right or wrong, like again, even with like the rust or the blood on the wall, like guys, we're obviously looking through screens trying to just talk about it and speculate it and see if we pick up on something. But what I'm getting at is like, how has, with all of the stuff that's been uncovered by like sleuths, how has not one of those things made it into a Dateline documentary type thing? How has not one of those things had an article written about it? How have not, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like with other cases, it happens where it's like the people digging into it get the, you know what I mean?
Sometimes, but Operation Mockingbird, you got these news organizations that are owned by essentially 2-3 companies. They seem or appear independent because the names are different, but they're all a part of the same conglomerate. And you have narrative control. I mean, a lot of journalists who've quit mainstream media, one of them specifically was Catherine Herridge. I forget, I don't know how to say her name. She worked for, I want to say it was CBS. She was one of the most respected reporters because she was very down the middle, just report the news. She had a Supreme Court hearing because they took all of her reports. They took all of her files of a reporter when they fired her, and they held them. And she had to go to court to get her stuff back. And she won, thankfully, but it was super scary for her because she was reporting on the Hunter Biden laptop.
So this just came up in the Hive. Somebody said, sometimes I don't think we give SG enough credit. He probably is smarter than we think he is. Thoughts on that?
I base intelligence on a couple of factors, and one of them is emotional intelligence. And to me, Steve is somebody that talks and thinks as an afterthought, because if you cared about this case being tried correctly, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing, because you would know that it could possibly affect things like having the trial on time. You know what I mean? Because a defense wouldn't be asking for a motion for continuance if you weren't leaking things or running your mouth.
What if Steve, okay, so Phoenix just brought up a good point. Yep, because SG is thinking legally strategic. He's going to sue the pants off of Idaho for millions. Okay, what if he knows exactly, or what if he picked up on the fact, like, why are you guys telling me all this? He's like, you guys are telling me this for what? Do you want me to go out there and do it? Do you want me to do that? And maybe he threatened to do that because he has threatened to say, I'll be the guy, I'll do it. Especially in the beginning when he said he didn't know if they were doing enough. Maybe he took what he knew then and is now leaking it, knowing that it's BS, but maybe there was a hint of truth in it. Hence, what came out in Dateline clearly was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Well, you have to think, if you're strategically thinking of this, like if you're Steve, we know for a fact that he went to the feds to question them to see, because he didn't trust the investigation in the beginning. And he said, could you federally charge him with this if the state fails to meet their burden?
Wait, say that again?
Steve went to the feds, and in an interview, he said,
Oh, yes, I read
I
this.
asked federal investigators, could you federally charge Brian Koberger if the state fails to meet its burden? Because he wasn't trusting how the investigation was going. So he wanted to make sure that at least somebody would prosecute him or somebody would figure this out, and whoever did this would be brought to justice. If it's not going to be from the state of Idaho and the Latah County or Ada County, then it's going to be from the feds. But somebody's going to have to bring somebody to justice for my daughter. And then on the other end, he civilly is covering his bases by saying, if this goes sideways, we're suing the shit out of you. So you have a lot of bases covered there. And so either which way, you're not getting your child back. They're never coming back. So I think he's done a pretty good job of covering his bases for worst case scenario, no matter how this plays out.
The tinfoil hat conspiracy of the day. Okay. It's the subway smell, like the sandwich shop. Okay. It's chemical coercion. The smell is not natural. And you ever wonder why Subway smells exactly the same? Even though they make 17 different types of sandwiches, breads, meats, sauces, it's not coming from the food. According to multiple franchisee testimonies, the quote-unquote bread smell is artificially enhanced through scent distribution vents, often tied into the HVAC systems. That's right. They're pumping that aroma like psyop gas pretty much, because it's not food smell. It's actually weaponized fragrance. The scent is the most primal brain trigger. Smell bypasses the rational brain and goes straight to the limbic system, the same area that handles memory, emotion, and instinctual behavior. That means you don't think about what Subway smells like. You feel it. It hijacks your fight or flight response and replaces it with a craving for 12 inches of fake ham and processed regret. It's not bread. It's actually an emotional override. But food scent technology is a real thing. Companies like Aromix, IFF, and Simrise openly work on scent messaging, emotive olfaction, and invisible branding through chemically engineered aromas. These companies can design a scent that stimulates buying behavior, reduces anxiety, or makes you associate the brand with nostalgia, safety, or hunger. The Subway smell, it's not an accident. It's a proprietary blend, likely involving synthetic comfort signalers, simulating fresh baking, and triggering hunger. Now, the craziest thing is that franchisees can't turn this off.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life.